Day of the Blizzard, Chapter 2. Snow! Katie, wake up! It's snowing outside! Michael, the taller of the twins, stood by the bed, pulling on Katie's arm. Behind him, Kevin was jumping up and down with excitement. Katie sat up. She had fallen asleep in her clothes where she had stretched out on Papa's side of the bed. She felt stiff and cold. Michael had pulled the heavy drapes aside, but only a little gray light showed through the stiff net curtains. "Hush! You'll wake Mamma," Katie whispered. She slid off the bed and went to look out the window. At first she couldn't see anything at all. A frosty garden of ice blossoms had grown across every window pane. It took a lot of blowing and scraping to open up a tiny peephole. Even then she had to stand on tiptoe to see over the mound of fluffy snow piled high on the window ledge outside. Beyond that barrier, snowflakes were falling so thickly that they hid the other side of the street. "Katie, can we go outside to make a snowman?" Michael begged. "Can we go slide in the snow?" "Shh! It's too early. It's still dark outside. Go back to bed," Katie whispered again. She glanced uneasily at Mamma, but Mamma was stirring. She opened her eyes. "Is it morning?" she mumbled. "It's scarcely 5, Katie said. Mamma lifted herself up on one elbow. She looked around the room. "Where is your papa?" she whispered. Her voice was so weak, Katie could hardly make out the words. Mamma didn't wait for an answer. "Tell papa he must go for the brooch today. He mustn't forget," she said. "The money and the ticket are in the envelope on the mantel. Tell him now, Katie. Give it to him." The brooch! With all her worrying about Mamma, Katie had almost forgotten. She stared at the stiff white envelope propped up against the mirror. The small green pawn ticket inside was all Mamma had left of the bow-shaped garnet pin she had worn on her wedding day. Katie could hardly bear thinking about it. The glittering little bow was locked away in the strong box of the Gotham pawn shop way downtown on 44th Street. It had been there ever since that awful day in December when both twins had been so sick with scarlet fever that Mamma didn't think they would live. The $8.50 the pawnbroker gave her had paid for the doctor and costly medicines. Mamma tried to say more, but the effort was too much. She started to cough, the hard, hacking cough that had plagued her for so many days. She sank back onto her pillow and closed her eyes. Katie was relieved that Mamma didn't seem to expect an answer. How could she tell her that Papa hadn't come home? Thinking of Papa brought a lump to Katie's throat. If only she knew what had happened to him. Mr. Riley had told her that Papa would be all right, but Katie pushed her worries about Papa to the back of her mind. There was so much to do. Overnight the icy air from outside had crept into the room. Katie shivered in her crumpled chambray dress. She stirred the ashes in the fireplace, but the fire had gone out. There were only a few lumps of coal left in the scuttle. If Papa had come home last night, he would have brought up more from the cellar. Katie threw what she had on the grate and put a match to the kindling. Mamma needed warmth. At the washstand, a thin layer of ice had formed on the water in the tall china pitcher. Katie carried it into the kitchen. The coals in the black kitchen stove were still alive. Katie fanned them into a blaze and filled the big iron kettle. Hot tea, water for washing, a pot set to boil for the breakfast stir-about. Katie had helped Mamma so often to get the household started in the morning, she did it almost without thinking. Instead, her mind kept going back to the small green ticket inside the envelope in Mamma's room. Katie knew why Mamma was so worried about it. The loan had come due. Today was the last day for Mamma to redeem her ticket, to go to the shop and get back the brooch. After today, the pawnbroker was free to sell the brooch to any customer, most likely for much more than the $10 Mamma owed him. $10! That was an awful lot of money. For $10, Mamma could buy the new winter coat she needed so badly, or make half a dozen new dresses for Katie. $10 would buy enough coal to heat all of their rooms for a whole winter, and more. But Mamma had saved the money. She had worked late hours as a seamstress to earn extra money until all the quarters and dimes and nickels added up right. A lot of hems were taken up, and shirt-waists taken in to get all that money together. Katy could almost see the piles of skirts, the mounds of coats and dresses Mamma had worked on for all these months. So many extra stitches to lay $10 by. Now the large dollar bills and the green pawn ticket were safely sealed in the envelope, ready to be taken to the pawnshop today. All of yesterday Mamma had worried in the midst of her feverish dreams about that brooch. Dozens of times she had begged Katy to remind Papa of the errand, to make sure that Papa wouldn't forget. "Don't worry, Mamma," Katy had promised each time. "Don't worry, it will be all right." But it wasn't all right. Papa wasn't home to keep Katy's promise. Katy suddenly decided, "I'll just have to go myself." It wasn't so hard to go to the pawnshop. She knew just where it was. The address was right on the envelope. Mr. Harry Lemon, Gotham Pawnshop, 743 3rd Avenue. That was near 44th Street, Mamma had said. The problem was Mamma. Could Katy leave her alone with the twins? But the errand wouldn't take long if Katy went downtown on the 2nd Avenue L. The elevated railroads were much faster than the old-fashioned horse cars, and if she hurried she could still make it before the fare went up from a half-dime to a dime at 7 o'clock. From her own small hoard under her bed, Katy took the round leather change purse Aunt Maggie had given her and shook some coins into the palm of her hand. A couple of 3-cent pieces, 2 tiny half-dimes, and 1 shiny dime. Plenty to take her downtown by L and back on the cheaper horse cars. With some luck she might even be home again before Mamma woke up. If only it would stop snowing. Snow always slowed up everything. She took the envelope from the mantel and tucked it into the deep pocket of her coat. The money went into her other pocket. There, now all was safe. If only the twins could be trusted to behave themselves for a while. Michael and Kevin were eating oatmeal at the kitchen table. "I must run an errand for Mamma," Katy explained. "Be good and look after Mamma. If you need help, call Mrs. Riley. I'll be back soon." Katy paused on the second-floor landing. Should she tell Mrs. Riley that she was leaving Mamma alone with the twins? No. Mrs. Riley was always so nosy. She'd want to know where her errand or what her errand was, and ask a million other questions. Katy was sure that Mamma wouldn't like Mrs. Riley to know about the Gotham pawnshop. Katy buttoned her coat to her chin and pulled on the gloves Mamma had knitted for her last Christmas. She had borrowed Mamma's warm mohair shawl and wrapped it securely around her head and shoulders. Now she felt quite prepared for the storm, but when she opened the outside door, the wind hit her so hard that it almost spun her around. Icy snow sprayed into her face. The 6 steps of the stoop were nearly hidden inside a mound of snow. For one silly moment Katy wished she'd brought down the twin sled to slide down the steep incline. How quiet it was in the street. Not a footstep or hoofbeat sounded, not a rattling of wheels against the cobblestones. Nothing but the howling of the wind as it screamed through the block, tearing at anything not fastened down. Mounds of white wherever she looked. It was bad. But it's only snow, Katy thought. She pulled Mamma's shawl closer around her head, and plunged into the storm.